First, I want to remind people why this is an important subject. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. These are celestial beings, commonly called angels. These celestial beings are the enemies of the Almighty who go to war against us. Now, on to the study. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. And his tail drew the 3rd part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. Many have stated this passage is a parenthetical statement, i.e. a flashback, and the entire 1/3 of celestial beings, commonly referred to as angels, fell in the beginning before mankind fell. However, this passage was written in the very last book of the canonical Bible, the book of Revelation, and the woman referenced in this passage will prophetically flee to the wilderness for 1,260 days, suggesting a future fulfillment. Consider if this were a parenthetical statement, i.e., referring to something in the past, why are there no other scriptural references to this concept? As a supporter of extra-biblical texts, I have not found any other supporting evidence for this concept. I believe the 1/3 of the celestial beings joining up with Hasatan is a final tally, and that the celestial beings fall progressively over time. The kingdom of darkness is not just after the souls of men, but of any member or potential member of the kingdom of Yahweh. I believe this is why Paul says in 1 Corinthians 11, 9 through 10, "Neither was the man created for the woman, but the woman for the man. For this cause ought the woman to have power on her head because of the angels." Paul was telling women to cover their heads in order to not tempt any more celestial beings to lust after them and leave their first estate like in Genesis 6. That means Paul is under the impression that angels are still capable of leaving their first estate. Dr. Michael Heiser would agree.
The advice he gives there, does have to do with modesty, but then he throws in this little line, well, we want to be careful about this because of the angels. So what it tells you is that, at least in Paul's mind, we really don't want this to happen again. So that tells you that maybe he was thinking it could.
Yeah.
So it gives you a little insight into what he's thinking that goes back to this question.
For those into biblical cosmology, I believe this is why we see falling stars and why there's an increase of stars falling to Earth. The final tally has not been reached yet. Once a celestial being has fallen, I believe they're stuck here until Judgment Day or until they are destroyed. Look at Jeremiah 10:11. "Thus shall ye say unto them, the gods that have not made the heavens and earth, even they shall perish from the earth and from under these heavens." The fallen Elohim shall perish from the earth and from under these heavens implies they die the first death here in earth and not in another realm like heaven or Sheol. Psalm 82, 6 through 7. "I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High, but ye shall die like men and fall like one of the princes." In order for a celestial being to die like a man, it has to live like a man and die a first death like mankind. To live like mankind, wouldn't the fallen angels have to look like mankind also? Can they look like normal men and women? Hebrews 13:2 says, "Be not forgetful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares." Jasher 23:25, "And whilst Abraham was proceeding with his son Isaac along the road, Satan came and appeared to Abraham in the figure of a very aged man, humble and of contrite spirit. And he approached Abraham and said to him, Art thou silly or brutish that thou goest to do this thing this day to thine only son? Jasher 23, verse 29 through 30 says, And Satan returned and came to Isaac, and he appeared unto Isaac in the figure of a young man, comely and well favored. And he approached Isaac and said unto him, Dost thou not know and understand that thy old silly father bringeth thee to the slaughter this day for naught? In the book of Tobit, the angel Raphael appeared as a man and called himself Azarias, and went on a lengthy journey to another country, Media, with Tobias. Finally, there is one more critical example that gets overlooked: Lucifer. Isaiah 14:12 through 15. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. Isaiah is talking to Lucifer. However, in verse 4, it reads, That thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon. Isaiah told this Lucifer passage to the king of Babylon. I believe this implies the king of Babylon and Lucifer are the same person. Lucifer is merely playing a character like an actor, just as Raphael played Azarias in the book of Tobit. So, it looks like celestial beings, whether good or evil, have the ability to look like humans of any age and walk amongst humans. These celestial beings are immortal, which means they cannot die by old age or health complications. Their death will have to be of a more serious nature. I believe they live generation to generation, changing identities until they are killed or until the final generation where they will be judged. So, how can one of these fallen angels acting as humans die? Thou hast also given me the necks of mine enemies, that I might destroy them that hate me. These are identical verses, which I believe means Yah is telling us this is important information. Scripturally, David had a few supernatural enemies like giants. Think about it. How did he kill Goliath? By a rock? 1 Samuel 17:49 through 51 reads, And David put his hand in his bag and took thence a stone and slang it, and smote the Philistine in his forehead, that the stone sunk into his forehead, and he fell upon his face to the earth. So David prevailed over the Philistine with his sling and with a stone, and smote the Philistine, and slew him. But there was no sword in the hand of David. Therefore David ran and stood upon the Philistine, and took his sword, and drew it out of the sheath thereof, and slew him, and cut off his head therewith. And when the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled. David took Goliath's own sword and beheaded him. That is when the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, when God gave David Goliath's neck. Quick side note. Notice David used Goliath's sword. David was not strong and confident enough before the battle to wield King Saul's sword, but after the battle, Goliath's sword became David's sword. Imagine the fear of the Philistine camp when they saw a young shepherd boy pick up a sword of a giant and cut off his head. No wonder the Philistines fled. This creates a more powerful physical meaning to David's words in Psalm 144, verse 1. Blessed be Yahweh, my strength, which teacheth my hands to war and my fingers to fight. Okay, let's get back to how celestial beings die from beheading. I find this fascinating. This notion that immortals can only die by beheading appears in many cultures and in many publications. So, is there any New Testament passage that can witness to there existing immortals in the earth that won't die until the final generation when Yeshua returns? Yeshua said, "Verily I say unto you, there be some standing here which shall not taste death till they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom." The word for here in the Greek is Strong's G5602, hode, which means here or in this place. So Yeshua said, "There be some standing here in this place which shall not taste death until he returns." Where was Yeshua and his disciples when he said this to them? Verse 13. When Yeshua came into the coasts of Caesarea Philippi. Yeshua was at Caesarea Philippi. Caesarea Philippi was a place of worship for other Elohim and is where the Greeks believe one of the gates to Hades, Sheol, is located. Also, the city sits at the base of Mount Hermon. This is where the 200 watchers made a pact to take wives and have their own offspring. I believe Yeshua was being literal that there were immortals there. I believe Yeshua was warning his disciples of Yah's enemies, the fallen angels. The previous verses leading up to this verse explain that you need to deny yourself, pick up your cross, and follow Yeshua, and that there's nothing in existence that is worth the price of your soul. I believe Yeshua finished this passage warning that there are immortals that exist today, that will exist until Yeshua returns, that will challenge and persuade humans to do the very opposite of Yeshua's words, to not deny yourself, to not pick up your cross, and to not follow Yeshua. Tangible, physical beings that appear to be human, but are secretly not human, and actually hate humans. With this in mind, think about how much more weight a wolf in sheep's clothing has. Now check this out. Paul tells us, "Know ye not that we shall judge angels?" Think about this for a minute. How can you fairly judge someone you never met, never saw, and never talked to over something you do not know about? I believe this verse is saying we will judge both the good angels and bad angels we interacted with in our personal lives. We will judge angels based on if they persuaded us to stay on the narrow path or pushed us off the narrow path to the wide path of destruction. Furthermore, for those that believe we are in the end of days, consider this passage from Enoch. "In those days shall the elect and the holy race descend from the upper heavens, and their seed shall then be with the sons of men." Enoch received the books of indignation and wrath, and books of hurry and agitation, and never shall they obtain mercy, says Yahweh Sebaoth. It appears that in the end of days, the celestial beings that progressively left their first estate will be able to procreate with mankind once again. Notice how it says these hybrid angel humans shall not obtain mercy. These hybrids are not capable to receive eternal life. So, this group of human-looking hybrids never had and never will have their names written in the book of life. For all humans have their names written in the book of life. It is sin that can blot a human's name out of the book. And it's these very beings that will be openly worshiping the beast in the end times. Revelation 13:8. "And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, the beast, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world." Now, Yeshua said, "But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and given in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Remember, Noah and his sons were the only ones perfect in their generations, i.e., they were the only people who were fully human, having normal human blood and DNA. This implies everyone else had tainted angel blood DNA. The Enoch 39 passage also gives more depth to the verse Daniel 42 to the verse Daniel 2 verse 43. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is mixed with clay. The fallen angels are what make up the kingdom of darkness, and they are the enemies of the kingdom of Yahweh. The book of Revelation says that in the end of days, the fallen angels will reach the pinnacle of their population in the earth, which is 1/3 of the celestial beings. Enoch 39, Daniel 2, and Matthew 24 explain they will be procreating with the seed of men again. They are basically replacing God's creation in the earth with one of their own making. The population of the angels and their hybrid offspring is rising, while the population of God's pure humans are declining. Once they have gathered all they can from the heavens and have enough hybrids from the mixing, they will be ready for a physical war in the earth. With this in mind, consider the war of Gog and Magog in Ezekiel 38 and 39. The definition of Gog in Strong's Concordance is the name of an Israelite and also of some northern nation. However, I found something interesting while studying another topic that made me rethink the concept of the Gog and Magog wars. Check this clip out.
What does Gog mean? Gog means a roof. What does that mean, a roof? That means the roof people from the land of the roof will come against Jerusalem, and ultimately they will be destroyed.
So Gog means roof. Whether you believe in biblical cosmology or not, it is understood the people of Ezekiel's day believed in it. So the people of the roof, or the roof people, are going to war against Jerusalem and eventually be destroyed? The roof is the firmament. Remember, celestial beings were commonly referred to as stars. Michael Heiser confirms there is something more cosmic about Gog.
Talk a little bit about Gog and Armageddon. Again, Gog is the great enemy from the north. Okay? If you remember Unseen Realm, what is it about the north that's important? Saphon. It's the domain of Baal. Okay, that's not a coincidence. Again, to cast Gog in that language, and I do a little bit about, there's a reason I think why Gog has never been identified successfully with a historical person, either in antiquity or currently. Because I think the point is not to direct our attention to a specific person, it's to direct our attention, again, to cosmic evil that will control whoever this Antichrist person is. And so I talk a little bit about that. And if you do that, again, you connect it back to Bashan, and then I go into connections between Gog and the Rephaim. Well, how in Gog are the Rephaim connected? Well, if Gog is coming from, the other parts of the earth, Saphon, and if the Antichrist guy is coming from the same place, that's also the region of the Rephaim, the giants. Again, you can do the math from the rest of that point. Again, it's not hard to connect the ideas once you get that point of geographical orientation. Cosmic north, region of Bashan geographically. And there are specific, again, links to the Titans and one particular Titan, Typhon. Again, there's a whole article on how Daniel 11 is sort of this chronology of the Antichrist that we get, how Daniel 11 tracks on the story of Typhon in Greek, literature.
Now, tracking this line of thinking, if these immortals are already here, why aren't they exuding more of their supernatural powers openly? Paul tells us, "For the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Only he who now letteth will let until he be taken out of the way. And then shall that wicked be revealed, whom Yahweh shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming, whose coming is after the working of Satan with all powers and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they received not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this cause God shall send them a strong delusion, that they should believe a lie." I believe the restrainer is acting like a veil that separates the multidimensional spiritual realm with our physical world. We cannot see the spiritual realm because it is being restrained from us. In other words, I believe the restrainer is forcing the fallen angels to live within the confines of a three-dimensional reality, restricting their extra-dimensional abilities and their true celestial forms. Militaristically, if these celestial beings want to have their powers back, and I'm sure they do, their goal would be to remove the restrainer. Once the restrainer is taken out of the way, the veil between the two worlds will be removed, uniting the physical realm and the spiritual realm. Then shall that wicked, i.e., the enemies of God, will be revealed, and we will see all the entities in their true forms. Now notice, after the wicked will be revealed, Yah sends a strong delusion. If the wicked are revealed, wouldn't that clear things up and thus not be a delusion? Well, not if you don't know what the entities are. This opens a window for a future alien deception. But they won't be coming by spaceships. I believe they are already here, like the movie They Live. Remember, Yah said it will be a strong delusion. Now, not having the love of God's truth will be the reason he will send a strong delusion. What is God's truth? It's God's Torah and Yeshua. Yeshua said, "And ye shall be hated of all men for my name's sake, but he that endureth to the end shall be saved." Why would the whole world hate Christ and people that follow Christ if half the world is supposedly Christian? I propose you will be hated because the majority of those living in the earth at the end of days will not be fully human, but hybrids whose destiny is the lake of fire. Luke 21:26, men's hearts failing them for fear and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. I believe God wants to prove each of us, to see if we love him enough to be obedient to his commandments, just like in the first Exodus. Our lives in this world are but a journey in the wilderness. Yeshua said, "But lay up yourselves treasures in heaven, for where your treasure is, there will your heart be also." Our rewards and treasures are in the world to come. The fallen angels have no life in the world to come, so they get their reward in this world.
This is a copy of the Zohar, Volume 1, and this is just, for example, one of the statements, many statements here. Uzzah and Azazel, from them the mixed multitude derived their souls, and therefore they are called the Nephilim, because they fall into fornication with fair women. For thus God cast them out from the future world, that is from eternity, in which they have no portion, and gives them their reward in this world, as it is written, He repays His enemies to their faces, and so on and so on.